afternoon again, everybody, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Another edition of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. Excited to talk with everyone today about some news and then bring on our guest for today. So today we learned of a few things in Foul Ball Safety Now news that we can share. There's been some injury reports that you can find at Foul Ball Safety Now. It's more of a compiling of news and reports that we found of injuries from the 2025 Major League Baseball season. So please go to Foul Ball Safety Now. You'll see it under press release. And also, we learned of a settlement in a case in Modesto, California, where there was a person who was standing outside of a ballpark who was struck by a baseball. Unfortunately, she had a serious injury, and there was a settlement in that case where I guess the plaintiff got consideration from the team that her injury was obviously important enough to make the settlement. So that's what the party and the attorney decided to do, is to take settlement. In those cases, we sometimes don't learn about the story about what happened. I'm able to report about it. I'm hoping the Modesto Bee publishes a couple of letters that we wrote. We just sent out another letter to them today. So hopefully the next time I record, I'll be able to give you guys an update on that. We feel like the people who attend Modesto baseball games should learn about what happened to this woman. And also Modesto's in the news as well for another matter where their corporation who owns the team is not extending netting at their ballpark this year because they're moving to San Bernardino next year. And I think once the season ticket holders figure it out, or the people that go to games once in a while, they're not going to be pleased that they were one of 44 teams that didn't have the extended nets. So there's greater chance for people getting hurt when there's no netting or lack of netting. Netting extensions are improvements, they're not solutions. And sometimes the questions that come up from the guests will address those issues. So as people know, maybe if you've heard this show more than once or read the outline of the show, you'll understand that the tables are turned and we're going to introduce a guest who may have just learned about Foul Ball Safety Now and some of the issues we've been talking about for 6 years. And they've had an opportunity to do some research over the last few days and then come back to us with some questions. So before I introduce our guest for the day, I have somebody who works with me on these podcasts, Brianna Ludwig. Say hi, Brianna.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Appreciate that, Brianna. Brianna will have some things to say as we go along, and I'm looking forward to her bringing her input into the show. Well, without further ado, I want to introduce a guest who we met a short time ago. She's a scuba diver instructor. She's from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Kirsten De Los Reyes. Kirsten, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for the opportunity to join you guys. I'm excited to be talking to you about this.
Well, we really appreciate that you're here and we are receptive to the questions. And it's always exciting to hear new people and their own perspectives. So I guess we'll just turn it over to you.
Obviously, during our initial conversation, I shared with you that I'm a pretty extensive athlete throughout my childhood and through collegiate years. I've volleyball, basketball, softball, soccer, swam, I dove, I played tennis, and now I'm into the master scuba diver instruction. So I've been around sports, and specifically sports that involve balls, vast majority of my life. I found this topic to be very intriguing because it's not anything that I've been that aware of other than when I'm actually in a ballpark and have to be made aware of the risk that come with sitting down close to the baselines in a ball field. Doing some research and coming up with some questions for you all. My first question is there a national standard for safety netting in the Major League Baseball stadiums?
There is no necessarily verbatim national standard. There have been suggested recommendations, and some people may interpret them as mandates of things that have come from Major League Baseball that have asked or strongly suggested Major League teams to do upgrades And also in 2022, at the end of the year, they made an announcement that all teams in the minor leagues, the professional
Mhm.
development leagues, would have extended netting by 2025, but they did not ask them to take care of those upgrades immediately. They gave them two and a
Okay.
half seasons to get the job improved to where they suggested it should be. And there's other examples of ownerships at major league level that have offered to do the netting and completed the upgrades in 4 days. So there's not necessarily a one size fits all mandate for all teams.
Mhm.
It really depends on the construction. And
Mhm.
they're telling these organizations to do the best they can do to meet those guidelines. But where are those guidelines coming from? Is it more of an internal aesthetic consensus amongst the owners, or is it coming from an outside agency who doesn't care about its internal aesthetics? They're just all about this is where the kids can come and this is where the kids may not be able to come. So, how
Mhm.
did they arrive at that?
So basically, each team, each stadium is left to their own policies.
I think that's the way it's going to come out once enough people start asking these questions, which
Mhm.
I think is coming. These conversations that we're having is an opportunity to put
Mhm.
all the information that we have on the table for everyone to address. And we believe once people learn that there wasn't enough transparency on why
Mhm.
netting extensions, how they became the status quo, I think most people are going to feel like maybe there should have been a little bit more in the process of doing that because I'm still aware of too many people getting injured.
Just to take it another step further
Sure.
is, do you feel like the fan experience has something to do with this? That sometimes the argument can be made that the fan experience, the netting, extended netting makes the appearance, as you mentioned just a minute ago, the appearance within the
Mhm.
stadium not as inviting, takes
Mhm.
away from the experience, and maybe it's an excuse to avoid tougher safety standards?
Well, you raise an interesting question. I do believe since 1970, when a 14-year-old boy died at Dodger Stadium, they
Mhm,
knew they knew for 45 years that it was a danger to sit behind the dugout.
mhm,
And what did they do about it? Maybe the netting technology wasn't great in 1970, and it clearly was on the minds of management that if we put up
mhm,
the nets, so many people are going to complain. At the same time, so what if people complain? It's about educating them and bringing them up to
mhm.
speed about where their children may be sitting and what's appropriate and what's not. But clearly now we're in 2025, 55 years later, and the netting appears to improve greatly over the last 10 years. Teams have extended their nets above their dugout, further down the lines, on
Mhm,
the major league level, the 30 major league teams. I'm also talking about another 169 other professional ball clubs that also have their own unique circumstances. I get upset when management may have said things throughout the last 55 years. From 1970 to 2025 is 55 years. We can
mhm,
find quotes from management from years past that have said things like, our fans don't want the extended netting. Our fans don't want the extended netting. By them saying that, also possessing knowledge, advanced
mhm,
knowledge, they know this raw data. They have every opportunity to tell us in the winter months what really happens more or less in the spring and the summer. So when they
mhm,
possess the numbers similar to like the 538 revisited report, which we call Exhibit A1, which demonstrates just how many foul balls go into the hot zones year after year, it gives me a sense of those SOBs. They possess the knowledge, and then they're also creating noise that their fans aren't interested in having extended netting. Why not tell them in 2002 or 2007 or 2012 that we know what we can anticipate exactly what's happening for this spring and
mhm,
summer? Would you like to hear about it? I don't think they ever took that approach. If they did, certainly more informed families would have thought again if their little ones were going to sit in those hot zones, similar to what we saw in the Exhibit A video, that 5-minute video, which you guys can see, the ESPN video, which we call Exhibit A. That was 2019. So clearly,
Mhm.
it demonstrates that no child should ever be in any of those hot zones, because that was a thread of unfortunate incidences that took place in 2019 or before, of children being seriously injured. And there's still at
Mhm.
least 40 cities that we know of, approximately 40 cities out of the 169, that still work in those situations where there's lack of netting in those arenas, in those ballparks. So, it's for all of us to figure it out. Life's not fair. Sorry. But, they
Yeah.
took away the seatbelt privileges from parents back in the 70s, I guess, where you weren't allowed to let the kids roll around in the back. Well, if it's been determined that thousands of these things are coming every day at our babies, maybe it should be determined that it should be an adults only matter, and it should be advertised that way. If you really want to deal with the rest,
Mhm.
come on down. But it's never been portrayed that way. Similar to like running with bulls in Spain. You have to be
Right.
18 and older.
Right.
You shouldn't be allowed to bring the nieces and the nephews, kind of thing.
It's a matter of transparency
Mhm.
and allowing people to make an informed decision. Knowing what I know, I would never bring my children to a game. And adults also need to be able to make that decision for themselves, knowing that what they're walking into could potentially change their life forever.
Well, and that's was to my point, or my next question was gonna be, are there safe seating options in stadiums specifically for families? Or is it just people buying tickets randomly and they're choosing to sit behind the dugouts and things like that?
There's no professional setting that I know of
Okay.
that says you'll be scar free, enjoy the night. There's nothing like that. And
Mhm.
in some of these ballparks, the designs are so bizarre that there's playgrounds without awnings. I saw
Mhm.
one with an awning the other day. I was like, oh, that's nice. There's an awning. But on TV, I was watching a professional minor league game, I think it was. There's so many things that you can find on TV these days. All these games have their own networks. So I'm sometimes watching some of these other professional cities host games, not just always the major league teams. But there really needs to be an independent netting council that determines exactly the past to the present, where the net should have been all along. Then we'll determine if MLB was transparent or not. And unfortunately, I don't think they have been. So that's why it's really good when people ask us questions. Sometimes we get a chance to hear the same questions, but with different points of view.
Well, it's very interesting that you were talking about minor league because my husband and I have a very, very dear friend of ours who is the actual head coach of the Joliet Slammers, which is a
Oh, how
minor league
about
team
that?
out of Chicago.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we actually just went to a ball game. They were in town playing against the Florence Freedom and
Okay.
went to the game, and the numbers of families and the numbers of children that were at that ball game was incredible. Now, you piqued my interest when you mentioned earlier about how the minor leagues were given some information to extend their netting by 2025, but not all of them have done that.
There's about 40. The Joliet Club may be part of the MLB Partner League teams. So I'm not sure where their exact netting is today. Do you
Yeah,
recall where their exact netting was?
I do
Okay.
not, but it's
I have it written down somewhere. We could talk about that on another conversation. They may be part of the MLB Partner League teams. There's 120 professional development league teams. These
Mhm.
were the teams that supposedly had to extend netting by 2025. But then there's another 49 of the MLB Partner League teams. They're not part of that equation. So
Right.
at least 30 of the 49 still have not extended their netting.
Mhm.
Approximately 30 of the 49 still have not extended netting past the end of the dugouts. It's kind of weird to say, well, 45 minutes down the road, you can find the ballpark
Right.
that does have extended netting. That doesn't
Mm.
add up either. These are 100-mile-an-hour balls in whatever league you're calling it.
100-mile-an-hour balls, broken
Line
bats.
drives coming into exposed areas. Regardless of what league it's called, you go 45 minutes down the road in some other city, we're talking 169 cities, so there's probably a ballpark every 45 minutes in the United States. One
Right.
shouldn't have extended netting and one should. One does, one doesn't. Improvements are nice. They're not solutions. We know of gaps everywhere. We know of balls going inside ballparks that have extended netting, hurting and blinding people. We know balls that are flying outside ballparks, unfortunately, hitting people. It's a conversation that we're having, and we're excited that you're bringing us these interesting
Mhm.
questions.
To Brianna's point, a minute ago about being educated and thoroughly educated on the risks that come with going into a ballpark, that she has the opportunity, Brianna has the opportunity to be thoroughly educated and can make that thoughtful decision for her and her family. If the general public doesn't have that same level of knowledge or the same level of information distributed to them where they can make the educated decision one way or another for their family, that's not fair.
A level playing field or something like that.
Like, do you think that when people buy tickets that they're
Yeah.
aware of the risk they're taking? I'm guessing there's gotta be fine print somewhere on a
Fine,
ticket.
fine print that you could never find. And the legacy of Major League Baseball has been keeping it in fine print. And now it's on
Mhm.
fine. Go find it on your phone. A lot of F
Yeah, it's
sounding
not
words there. Yes. How are you going to find the little thing that you really deserves a magnifying glass, really deserves a one pager to every fan over the
Yeah.
winter, and a dialogue with management with frequently asked questions? Where has that been?
they're not provided with the stats or,
Right.
the injury due to foul balls, flying bats annually. So they're just
Right.
going on faith that the risk is less than the reward of being in a ball game.
Something like that. Absolutely. Most people associate the foul balls with fun, not with the danger
Right.
element.
How do you not interfere, or how do you balance the tradition of catching a foul ball with attendee safety?
Right. Well, what's done is done, as I like to say. We're in
Yeah.
healthy aggression mode in 2025. We feel like we're still in the dark ages because none of this
Mhm.
information has ever been known. But we feel
Right.
like the people that we've met along the way, the journalists who I've been working with for 6 years, all the interviews we've done with victims, even family members, including a separate pool of people we've interviewed, are baseball players who are
Mm.
getting the monkey off their back, telling us a lot of stories. We've interviewed more than 30. We're dealing with that present day situation in Queens College where the student athlete contacted me and is concerned about the teammates. If you Google Earth Queens College baseball field, they're right next to an elementary school. So they're
Oh.
wondering amongst themselves who's going to do the damage. And I said, well, that's legit. And
Mhm.
even in the NCAA guidelines, one of my law school students that I've been working with, very nice guy, he found something that we could pull a quote, a paragraph out, clearly shows that the student athlete is mental, is psychological well-being is being invaded by this. And we wrote 2 letters out to the Queens College administration, got a response back immediately from the athletic director, but that was in May, but we wrote a second letter late in July. We're not singling out Queens College as being the only offender of this matter. We
Sure.
believe it could be anywhere. We've got a few other examples. Obviously, the lady who was hurt by the foul ball in Modesto, California, but we've got a couple of other things we learned. A booster in Tennessee contacted me. Hey, Jordan, we can't even have soccer and baseball games going on simultaneously. So at least they're conscious about it and they're talking about it. And then a situation in suburbs of Philadelphia found some research that a woman bought a house next to a baseball field, and during practice and games, balls are hitting her house and the kids can't go out and play. And the city council is saying things like, well, the school was here before the development, so go blame the developer. So she's got that. So it's very unique, this perspective. And we're just finally having this issue addressed. I would have one thing to say. If professional baseball ever had their house in order, they should have a subdivision that deals with all the other situations throughout colleges and high schools on how they could be of assistance.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be a lovely concept?
Right? Yeah.
that they could add a little funding to these high schools and colleges and other places to make sure that the balls don't hurt. But until you fix your own house, your past and
Right.
present, you're not going to be able to fix anyone else's. So that's just a little
Right.
saying. So
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. Are any kind of warning signs within the stadiums when they're in, like you call them, hot zones? When I look at buying a concert ticket, I'll look at buying a concert ticket at a music venue, and it will tell you if there's an obstructed view on the ticket. Is there anything within the stadiums that alerts people that they're sitting in a hot zone, or is there something on a ticket that could be placed on their ticket to know that you're buying a ticket within a hot zone?
Sometimes there may be more signs than you thought would be necessary. I don't think that's the case. But even if that was the case, even I've seen, maybe it was at Yankee Stadium or Citi Field a few years back, I saw signs on the back of the seat, where you put your drink on the little cup holder. There may be a little sign that says, be careful of a foul ball. Even that, which would be very direct and telling you in advance, even if that was there in all of the ballparks, I doubt that they're all there in all ballparks because, again, there's no uniform protocol. It's all like, well, we'll take some courtesies here. We'll put some announcement up there. There'll even be signs pasted all over the ballpark over there. But even that being said, take a look at Exhibit A at Foul Ball Safety Now, that 5-minute ESPN production from 2019, and tell
Mhm.
me how you're going to get out of the way, even by knowing in advance. Look at what
Right.
happened to the umpire, Hunter Wendelstadt, found on the website, a new exhibit that we placed up there a few months ago. He hasn't been back to work since. He was 100 feet away. He was 90 feet and then another 10 feet behind. First base umpire, he's staring at the play coming about, and he got hurt. Now, there's at least 40 ballparks, approximately 40 ballparks, that are also exposed areas 100 feet away to a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, depending on what first base or third base line. How are they going to get out of the way? He's been out of work. So even that, it's like we're not superheroes. We're just not superheroes who could deflect that ball. And that's really what it comes down to. And all the warnings and all the management and everything, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And that's unfortunate. And I knew my impulse was to go hard on them 6 years ago, and I'm still with it because these are all preventable incidences in my mind. And I'm not understanding why, except from when people come up with their legal theories on why baseball has to protect themselves, why they're not addressing it. But that's a longer conversation for another question. Why they
Right.
haven't addressed this back in 1970. Speaking of lawyers, my lawyer's friend, excuse me, when she was 14 years old in 1979, got blinded in one eye by a ball. And why it hasn't been addressed since she was blinded as a teenager. Just a lot of things that people need to learn, and they can determine for themselves how business as usual was conducted when they took their kids to the game, or still do. We're just raising questions.
Right.
We want to put what we can on the table from historical to present and let everyone join us and go further. That's all we can do.
Well, and I find it interesting that you were talking about, the gentlemen that are actually on the field and actively engaged in the ball game that are injured and now are out of work. And these are people who are paying attention to the game.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are in the stands dealing with their children and on their phones and drinking a beer and talking to people that aren't even nearly as engaged as the people on the field. And so their ability to respond to a ball coming at them at, 100 miles an hour is going to be less
Yeah.
than those on the field.
Yeah. A coach unfortunately died in 2008 at a minor league game. And we read some of the history from what his widow had said at the time. Mike Kuba, his widow was Mandy. This stuff that you can find online. I think Mike used to call out to Mandy when Mike was a player, before he was a coach, maybe 10 years earlier. Maybe they were dating at the time. And he would say, get out of that area and go sit behind the nets. So how crazy that a first base coach catches one. Unfortunately, he got hit in the neck, but at least professional baseball, at the time was proactive, and they made them all wear helmets. I don't even know if the
Uh-huh.
helmet would have saved him, but that was proactive. The coaches in professional baseball are wearing helmets on the sidelines. But Hunter Wendelstedt wasn't a few months ago, and I don't know what the
Mhm.
extent of his long-term care is going to be. He hasn't been back to work in 3 months. A baseball player was recently injured. A lot of these guys are leaning over the rail and watching the games. And I think their topic of, I think it was sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, really important stuff to be, schmoozing about. Well, and he was distracted. Again, even if he was looking at the pitch. And then, of course, on deck hitters, it's still to this day, it really blows my mind why they don't share on deck circles. So, Kirsten, you understand the percentages of balls that deflect in each direction.
Oh,
Left-handed
sure.
hitter, why isn't the on deck hitter just automatically behind the left-handed hitter instead of in the bullseye? And they don't
Mhm.
share on deck circles, but they do in some little leagues. So some other little leagues got wind of it. Why don't they do it in Major League Baseball? The other day, I saw, I think it was Cedric Mullins on the Mets got out of the way of the ball. They didn't show it on replay because I don't know if they like to have their producers shine a light on close
Sure.
calls. But you heard the announcers say, like nonchalantly, "Oh, Keith, were you ever hurt by a foul ball in the on deck circle?" I know of one really seriously injured who's now doesn't have a career. This was back in maybe 2009 or 10. Juan Encarnacion was a baseball player in the on deck circle. Yeah.
Mhm.
And his career was ruined. Couldn't play anymore. And why they still put these guys in the bullseye, I don't know. Why you just share the on deck circle? The left-handed hitter is not going to all of a sudden hit it right behind him. It just doesn't add up. For those people that aren't big baseball fans, the left-hand hitter who's closer to first base than third base, there's a
Mhm.
better chance of him hitting it towards the third base side rather than right behind him on the first base side. It's probably 90-10 percentage-wise of, much greater significant risk. I just don't get it. Close calls on a
Mhm.
regular basis. We're aware of a few other injuries from being in the on deck circle, but the one that I mentioned was the most serious. Just certain steps. It doesn't, players are in harm's way too. And players
Right.
union, if you want to talk about that, supposedly over 4 years of negotiations, every 4 years they do collective bargaining. I heard that supposedly the netting issue was brought up, but I'd love to see the minutes of those collective bargaining meetings. And why would the Players Association even say it's time to have more netting for the fans and they go to work? Why wouldn't they dress it as like almost like a non-starter? Like our baseball players are in conflict. They're telling their own
Mhm.
families to sit behind nets. They don't feel comfortable going to work hitting balls into children. So until you put up the nets, we don't go to work. That's what I would have liked to do or liked to have seen done if they turned back the
Mhm.
clock. But what's done is done.
I find it interesting that if you look at hockey,
Uh-huh.
that in the hockey arenas, they have glass all around for flying pucks. And that was because of a young fan that was killed being
2002.
hit by a puck. Curious that, clearly there were initiatives put into place after that incident to hopefully
Right.
eliminate that happening again. Does baseball just see that injuries of fans as being part of doing business?
Well,
Or did
I say that doing business as usual, you decide whether they were in the dark ages then or now. I claim that they are, and that's where it's at. With hockey, I don't want to give hockey too much credibility.
Right.
Unfortunately, yes, somebody died in 2002, but
Mhm.
there were a lot of close calls prior. They did raise the nets actually much higher vertically behind the goalie, but on the sides, there are still gaps and there are still deflections to the side that go over.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people are getting injured every year. I haven't really been following the hockey story, but
Sure.
baseball, it's so graphic that we have so much video evidence and so many substantial reports that indicate why is there still a gray area. And
Right.
the fact is that we're talking and it's going to lead more people to talking. So I really appreciate, that we're having an opportunity to put this on the table. So it's really exciting.
Only imagine the level of guilt or sleepless nights that these ball players have when a foul ball injures or, seriously injures or kills someone.
Yeah. I mean, raises an interesting question, what the healthcare professionals who work on the teams for the mental health, what can they actually tell their players when these
Right,
situations happen? So there may be some conflict there because if you say too much, you may get this guy into a slump, or you may want to quit the
right.
you may want to quit the game because
Mhm.
it's part of the workplace environment. And there goes the $500,000 signing bonus, something
Right.
like that. So
Yeah,
it raises good questions. On a longer program, we certainly can talk about that. Are these anxieties shared with the mental health care professionals, like in the Queens College situation? It's
right.
exciting because this may put this issue on the map, and every healthcare professional who works in college and professional baseball, there may be
Mhm.
some sort of working conflict. Which, of course, we want to bring out. We want to find out if there is or if there isn't. So,
Right.
what is the obligation to the student athlete? What is the obligation to the mental health, to adhere to the mental health of all? And of course, yes, these guys are worried. They're human beings. And we've interviewed more than 30 guys, Brendan. So we know indirectly they feel some responsibility.
Right.
So we have something on the website called the Healing Project because we anticipate eventually we should be meeting 1,000 players a year that'll probably have something to say on a more formal basis because it's human nature. Nobody wants to hurt anybody.
Correct.
It's our instinct not to hurt. And
Right.
if they haven't been dealing with it honestly, or if it's been part of the workplace environment, we're getting a sense from the 30 people that they felt conflicted. So we feel like
Mhm.
others are not looking back. They just want to speak their piece. So we're ready. We have something at Foul Ball Safety now called the Healing Project. I can't tell you it's active and we're meeting people every day that are taking part in it. But based on what we've done in the last few years, meeting all these people, we get a sense that people are anxious to get the monkey off their back. So
Sure.
we're excited to talk to people.
So, you're a scuba diving instructor.
I am.
Scuba diving is obviously risky and it comes with a lot of risks.
Yeah.
So, I have kind of a loaded question in 3 parts, but do
Great.
you feel it's your responsibility to communicate these risks to your students? How do you do so in a way that doesn't scare them away? And what do you think baseball can learn from that?
Well, I think, it's interesting because before I actually became an instructor, obviously you have to start somewhere. And I was in Jamaica at an all inclusive resort and was going to do what they call as a discover scuba diving, which is you do a little bit of classroom work and then you go out into the ocean. And I remember doing the classroom work and it was basically don't do this, you could die. Don't do this, you could die. If you do this, you could die. And I thought, I don't want to die. So I'm going to go to the swim up bar. And so I didn't partake in that area of training at that point. And scuba diving is an extremely dangerous sport. There's a lot of education that goes into it. It's about taking your time, it's understanding the physiology of your body, the intake of oxygen and nitrogen and the effects on your body and how to manage those underwater. And once you get out of the water and on, back on to land or onto the boat, there's service interval time that you have to take to make sure that your body is readapting to, not being underwater. It's about the delivery and how you deliver the message about you can scare the daylights out of someone or you can just tell them that it's all in their control and it's a matter of you controlling yourself. You put your gear together because it's keeping you alive. You don't let anybody else touch your gear. It's very much in your control and it's about taking your time, being smart, being as educated as humanly possible. But like I said, most of it is in the delivery and making people feel comfortable underwater because it is the most unnatural thing to do is to breathe underwater. So it's approaching it in a very calm manner. I taught and teach private scuba. So I'm usually with 1, 2, up to 4 people. So it's a significantly much more controlled environment. It's when you get into dive instructors that are out there with 8 or 10 people that things can get a little bit wonky. It's just about controlling the environment, giving people confidence in their education and their abilities and keeping a close eye on them for a while.
Obviously, it would be unethical if say a scuba diving instructor didn't communicate risks because they just wanted to have a bunch of students, similar to how it's
Absolutely.
unethical that baseball doesn't openly communicate gravity of the risk. They throw a cute little sign up, but
Right.
maybe they're afraid of scaring fans away.
And I think genuinely believe when you made the statement earlier about knowing what you know now, that you would not take your children to a ballpark is exactly that. That people are not fully educated on the risks that they're taking on when they walk into a ballpark. They think they're going to a ballpark with their kids and their families for a great Sunday afternoon of eating peanuts and being the, American tradition of baseball, but they don't know the risks that come along with it.
It's interesting that the first time in your life when you were introduced to scuba diving, you heard the risks and you were like, "No, thank you." You were able to make that decision, and then at a different point in time, obviously, you came back to it. But that's so important that you were able to make that decision because you didn't feel ready.
Right.
And yeah, it's just a conversation that needs to happen. I wish baseball was safe to take my kids. I'd love to go to a baseball game, but I just can't do it with what I know. And I would hope that they could actually make it safe and then they don't have to pretend that it's a family friendly environment and it can really be a family friendly environment. We can all win. That would be great.
And to your point, they sell it as family friendly.
That's what's so messed up about it. It's
That
like Disneyland or a trampoline park or any of these places were marketing towards children,
Mhm.
and then there were, as Jordan sometimes paints the picture, like rocks coming down, raining down on the kids or something like that. Very twisted.
And the minute you walk into a trampoline park, you sign a waiver.
Yeah. I guess there's the baseball rule, which has been around for 100 years that protects baseball. And so purchasing the
Right.
ticket is like the waiver.
Right.
But except it shouldn't be in very large print, you know what I mean?
It should be a
Right.
process of education and a delivery, and I don't
There to
think that's ever really
yeah,
been. It's been disrespectful on what we've
Mhm.
heard about it in passing. It just has not
yeah.
been responsible in facilitating, and if it was, the questions would have been asked a long time ago, for sure, and we would have gotten to some places in common decency and had to run an organized community of baseball fans attending a baseball game. A lot to learn, a lot to continue to learn. I
Mhm.
think this was terrific. Good night to everyone. If they're still here, of course, we hope people check out Foul Ball Safety Now. Anything you've missed, you certainly can go searching for on the website. You'll see everything we've done in 6 years. And we tried to put everything we do out there from press releases to some interesting publicity stunts to court cases that I was involved with, trying to bring attention to the issue. Really want to thank our guests, Kirsten Taylor Reyes and Brianna Ludwig. Thank you so much, guys. And we shall do it again soon. Appreciate it.